right, everybody. Hello. It is Politics by Jake. Today is the 25th of August, 2025, 7 a.m. or thereabouts. And we are doing, as usual, our bi-weekly Monday and Friday show, 7 a.m. or on podcast anytime on kcaaradio.com. So there's, a lot going on, obviously. It's the premise of Politics by Jake wanted to do political education. I don't like to talk about current events that much because everybody else is doing their take on that. And that's just not really what we do at Politics by Jake. But there's so many things going on that, and we're going to be doing Kakistocracy Corner today. So let's just get into it. Donald Trump hates the United States, in my opinion, and he wants to destroy the United States. And all his actions are pointed in that direction. He fired an amazing amount of bureaucrats. Just by mid-May, he had fired 58,500 confirmed federal employees, 76,000 buyouts. In other words, they leave. You pay them to leave. That's 135,000 plus reductions. That's roughly 12% of the 2.4 million person civilian workforce. And of course, the reason he's doing this is because he wants to rape the Treasury and use that to pay his rich criminal friends. That's really what it is. Other reputable sources also provide insight. 75,000 resigned via deferred resignation buyouts. Additional reporting suggests nearly 10,000 firings just by February 2025, when he'd only been in office a couple of weeks. So basically what you're doing in a situation like this is you're destroying the government by getting rid of the people who know how to run it. He has attempted to elevate the likes of Jeanine Pirro, and Alina Habba, the parking lot law specialist, into U.S. attorneys. I will say that he has done this in a legal way, but this is Kakistocracy Corner that we're talking about. And Kakistocracy Corner, Kakistocracy is government by the worst, the most unqualified, the most underqualified people. That's what a Kakistocracy is, and it's part of his plan to destroy the government, rape the Treasury. And we're not necessarily talking about it was illegal. We're talking about from a standpoint of a Kakistocracy. In the case of Alina Habba, for example, she does have a law degree. She has chosen to waste it on parking enforcement law, or perhaps that's, all that she can do, and that she has made it a buffoon of herself, essentially, in front of judges, by doing just amazing things that make her, honestly, in my opinion, drop below a minimum level of competence as far as client representation is concerned. But, everybody's afraid. I mean, this is a time period when people are afraid. And these federal judges fear for their positions, and so they go lightly, and they shouldn't go lightly. It's up to PB&J, Politics by Jake, to go strong. It's up to people like me to tell the things that other people won't tell. And that's why you should listen to me. That's one of the premises for listening to this show. So the concept is that's good enough for Trump. Jeanine Pirro is good enough for Trump, a TV personality, essentially. You put these buffoons in positions of power, owing their power to him, owing their place to him, owing their entitlement and their prerogatives, their pay and their privileges. And that's good enough for him because they accomplish his ends. And what are his ends? As I said at the beginning of the show, the destruction of the United States, the furtherance and the prosecution and the facilitation of Project 2025, the Second American Revolution, so-called. But it'll be, and this is the good news, it'll be bloodless if the left lets it. So if we just allow ourselves to be steamrolled and have all these things happen that you are seeing now, the things I am recounting and I am going to recount are things that you are seeing now. This is all part of it. Then they won't kill you. At least not yet, until they think of something else. And why does this matter? 80% of Americans don't like Putin. And I'm actually getting into the summit thing. We're going to talk about the summit thing for a minute. At least 80% of Americans don't like Putin. They don't understand why their president is cavorting and treating with him, because they know that he's a dictator. They know that he's perfidious. They know that he's vile. They know that he's got blood on his hands many times over. And they know, whatever else they may think, that it is unseemly for an American leader to treat with such a vile and perfidious person as he is. And now let's continue with our little Kakistocracy corner. And of course, Donald Trump is the chief stone in the corner, to borrow something from scripture, of the Kakistocracy corner. So we've talked about him. And let's talk about Witless Witkoff, Steve Witkoff, chairman of the conference of the Putin, the summit, the so-called summit, the disaster in Alaska, who pretends that he's something, but really he's only a Queens landlord. It tried to raise rents on 18,000. It's one of his claims to fame. He tried to raise rents on 18,000 of his residents at the same time. And he carries a gun with him because he's so hated by them. And this is Donald Trump. This is Kakistocracy. You have Carolyn, love it or leave it. I just thought that up all by myself. Carolyn Levitt of the Ministry of Propaganda of the Trump regime can't get Trump's name right. Calls him Trump infrequently. I have a clip of this. Calls him Chump. Frequently, President Trump. It refers to the Nobel Peace Prize as the Nobel Peace Prize. But, then what can you expect from a 27-year-old over-the-hill college softball player? Girls got to do something to make a living, right? So Carolyn Levitt, I guess some people have made the joke. I don't know, but I'll make it here. Either love it or leave it. Or love it or leave it. Maybe that's the phrase. And we have Pam Bondi of the Department of Justice, who sent her attorneys in with pleadings before a federal judge that were made with ChatGPT and were full of errors, who have no respect for the lèse-majesté of the court and their role as judicial officers, and feel to do nothing except to mock the court with such things. And honestly, any attorney who has a minimum level of competence knows you always check your sources. You just don't fling case law all over the place. But these guys, they just printed them out. They didn't care. And the judge crapped all over them, took a giant crap all over them. And you know what? They didn't care. Pam Bondi, she didn't care either. She came back, she doubled down, says we're not backing down on this. And this is all performative. This is for the suckers. This is for the dupes. This is for the useful idiots. This is for the easily led. This is for the credulous. This is for the people who don't listen to Politics by Jake, 7 a.m. Mondays and Fridays, kca radio.com, or wherever you get your podcast. Cheap plug. And further with regard to this administration, I think a lot of people look at this, and this has been a characteristic, honestly, of Republican administrations and the Republican legislators, this unbelievable reflexive effusion of alternative facts. They're called alternative facts. Where does that come from? That's been going on. Al Franken wrote a book that had the great title, Lying Liars and the Lying Lies That They Tell. And it was all about the Republicans, and I have no doubt that they did it then and they are doing it now. So, but where do these alternative facts come from? Now, this is interesting. It comes from postmodernism. You've heard me talk about this on the show, and you might think, oh, Jake, here goes elitist Jake again, talking over our heads, thinking he's better than us. No, come on. I don't know anything about plumbing. You can talk about plumbing, talk over my head anytime. Listen to you because I trust you as a plumber or as an electrician or as an auto mechanic. But it comes from postmodernism, and one of the tenets of postmodernism is that there is no real truth. Do you think Trump believes that? I think he does. Do you think Carolyn Levitt, love it or leave it, believes it? I think he does. Do you think Fox News believes that? I think they do. And this is where this comes from. It's postmodernism. And of course, we reject postmodernism for modernism. Unfortunately, because of what Trump is doing, going after some of these Ivy League institutions about, basically, it's just extorting money from them. Because Trump believes that there is no truth and that there's only money. And actually, it's worse than that. Trump believes that there's only him and everyone else are characters in his play. But here's the thing. These institutions have taught this postmodernism. So they're kind of hoist on their own petard, aren't they? Hoist on your own petard. Being hoist on your own petard is a petard was a hand grenade. In Elizabethan times, it was called a petard. It was a hand grenade. It was a bomb, and you could hold it in your hand, and you could light it, and then you could throw it. So it was a prototypical hand grenade. And so the expression used by Shakespeare and others to be hoist on one's own petard, it means to be blown up with one's own bomb. And in this case, postmodernism is the petard or the hand bomb or the hand grenade that these institutions of higher learning have blown themselves up on because they're at the mercy, because they've taught it. It's all over the universities. And now the chickens have come home to roost. What went around has come around. And they're at the mercy of someone who believes in postmodernism and applies it, that there is no truth and that there is only money and that there are alternative facts and you can use these and that you are perfectly justified in doing so. So, all right, at this point, let's take a break. Politics by Jake. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about the disaster in Alaska. I've got a couple of insights on that, and then we'll be talking about some other things too. So stay tuned. This is Politics by Jake. And now here's a word from one of our sponsors, Twain Consulting. Hi, this is Jake with Twain Consulting. Let's be blunt, shall we? America is litigious. It's unstable, and it's financially weaponized. If your name is on everything you own, you're a sitting duck. At Twain Consulting, we help you vanish legally, ethically, and permanently. From land trusts to layered LLCs, we teach you how to restructure your assets so the predators can't see them and can't touch them. This isn't a loophole. It's a strategy that the wealthy have used for decades. Isn't it time you got the same protection? Call Twain Consulting at 805-380-5699 or visit us online. Protect what's yours before someone else claims it. And now let's get back to Jake and Politics by Jake. Hi, this is Jake with Politics by Jake to tell you you're not crazy. The system is rigged. Help us say it louder, won't you? Join us at patreon.com/Politics by Jake. All right, and this is Politics by Jake, and we're back. And like I said, at the end of the last segment, this is not really so much what I see PB&J doing on the show, but let's talk about some significant things about this summit. which some have referred to as a disaster. One colleague of mine referred to it as the disaster in Alaska. So that's a little awkward, but okay, we'll go with that. So you can see that there's Putin. He comes in, he's heavily made up. He's got stuffing in his cheeks. He's got something on his leg. Trump also. So when you're looking at this performative piece, and so much of it is done to avoid the Epstein files, we have these two sick individuals pretending to determine the future of the world. Now, let's just take a look at this here. Let's see. We're just talking about the sort of physical facts. There was this moment that's significant when the U.S. delegation came out of the negotiating room and the international press noticed that the American delegation was pale. They were ashen-faced. And I would ask, with what? With flight? With shock? We don't know. We know it was at the base. We know it ended early. It was supposed to be a lunch. There was a menu. It was supposed to be a kind of larger public session. Delegations at full strength. And what did we have? We have NBC News chief, White House correspondent, Peter Alexander, described Trump's aides and his staff this way. It includes some officials. Like I said, Carolyn Leavitt was there. Steve Witkoff, Dumkoff, whatever you want to call him. The guy who did the solo negotiations, the prep for this summit was, Witkoff. Of course, he's Kakistocratic. He's perfectly incompetent. He's a moron. He thinks he's a shark of New York City real estate. But I'm afraid that doesn't cut it on the world stage. So getting back to this, what does Alexander say on NBC? He says this: they came out with their eyes wide, appearing ashen in face. Press Secretary Leavitt specifically looked stressed out and anxious. And at MSNBC, Antonia Hilton noted Leavitt was ashen and appeared frightened after witnessing the events behind closed doors. Michael McFarland, the former U.S. ambassador to Russia, said, I think on MSNBC, the reactions by these staffers, by these aides, suggested that the meeting was a bigger disaster than was publicly admitted. There was a body language expert. Her name is Judy James. She was quoted as saying there was a sudden apparent shift in Trump's demeanor. And the 12-minute joint press conference with Putin on the right, it's not supposed to be that way. It's supposed to be that the president is on the right. You can see when you look at it from above, there he is. He talks about stuff, the historical excursus, which is, irrelevant. So no question, Trump looks deflated. And there's an old story that the Schönberg Palace in Vienna in 1961 and 62, and there, sort of in between, the Berlin crisis and the Cuban Missile Crisis, we have a story that Nikita Sergeyevich Khrushchev grabbed a hold of Kennedy and threw him against the wall or punched him. And Kennedy was willing to continue the summit there in the Schönborn Palace. This is why Khrushchev, we have to conjecture, but this is why we can think Khrushchev thought that Kennedy was weak and that he could go ahead and do a provocative act like putting missiles in Cuba and that Kennedy would allow it to happen. So, did something like that happen? In the Trump situation, it's not unprecedented, at least according to what I know. These are stories. But anyway, in this case, it was something that spooked the delegations. Now, the U.S. delegation is reported to have been cordial at the beginning, as we saw. But at the end, they had grim expressions on their faces. There was a tense parting handshake with Putin by Trump, characterized by a hard-looking stare and a quick release. And now, of course, breaking up a summit like this, of course, is no problem because it's a farce to begin with, okay? It's a fiasco. It's an exercise in consumer fraud. It's an attempt to dupe or lull or stupefy world opinion. And so they scattered. It was over early. They scattered. The cars are there. The limousines are there. The translators are running around. So what was it? No verbatim transcript has been released. We don't know. Now, a week has gone by, just about 6 days, 7 days, 8 days, I guess, as we speak. And you'd have to say it looks like it was Putin coming in there and saying, guess what? I'm not having a ceasefire. I'm not giving up anything. What am I willing to concede? Nothing. And one of the reasons we can kind of glean that is because some top Kremlin bigwig had told Sky News, British Sky News, what are we Russians willing to give up in order to get a peace in Ukraine? That's easy. Nothing. Nitschevo. Two words, two key words. Nitschevo. Nitschevo. All right, so look, Politics by Jake, PB&J, telling you what they won't tell you. This thing was obviously a failure. It was obviously misbegotten. It was obviously based on the duped, the gaslit. Witkoff was the lead man on this. He did like 6 or 7 meetings with Putin with nobody there. No translator, no nothing. And does this guy even take notes? I don't know. These guys are kakistocratic. They are notoriously superficial. They are notoriously lazy. This is kind of a continuation of the Kakistocracy corner. So, what seems to have come out of it is today there's no ceasefire. Putin does not want a ceasefire. None of this is really a surprise. We've all known that he will not meet with Zelensky. Putin hates Zelensky even more. He thinks metaphysically Ukraine doesn't even exist, that it's not even a nation, that it's not even a state. So in other words, it's impossible. It's unthinkable. Why would I meet with a person who represents something and a place and a geographical entity that I think doesn't even exist? And once again, we talked about the Third Rome. Remember? That's something that we talk about periodically. Russia thinks that it's the Third Rome. They look at the West as putrid, which, as I've said, is funny because they send their children to school here. They vacation here. I see them all the time in Los Angeles talking on their damn phones, speaking Russian. They come here wherever they can. They retire to the West wherever they can. They put their money in the Western banks. They love the West. I don't know what this thing is with the putrid West, but it's just probably for public consumption for their own brand of suckers and rubes, because they all love the West. But somebody of that caliber who thinks that they're the emperor of the Third Rome, basically a kind of vicar of God on earth, you can't meet with the president of Ukraine because there is no Ukraine. So forget about that. And you have heard me say, and I will say again, Trump, what is this flirting that you do with the Russians? You're going to get Russiagate thrown at you if you keep this up. If it sticks, you're always kowtowing. It's going to destroy you. You're always kowtowing. You're always falling to your knees. You're doing this genuflecting, all these physical gymnastics of a vassal. You're a satellite of Moscow. And it's not going to be popular if you keep it up. Can't you figure that out? And, I don't want him to figure it out from one standpoint. I want him to get nailed and I want him to go down. The problem is that he comparatively takes the United States with him. But this thing with Putin, it doesn't benefit Trump. It's a loser. I mean, we have the figures. And I talked about this a little bit at the beginning of the show. I'll bring it up. I think it's like 80. I said 80%. It's like 88% of American voters do not like Putin. And this is a combination of those who merely dislike him and those who really hate him. And if you put those together, you get up to 80%, 88%. So why are you messing around in public with this guy? Doesn't it indicate that there's something unusual going on here? So anyway, that's basically enough on that. And at this point, let's take a break. And we'll be back after a commercial message. And this is Politics by Jake. And now here's a word from one of our sponsors, Twain Consulting. Hi, this is Jake with Twain Consulting. Imagine, if you will, having the power to disappear from the prying eyes of creditors, identity thieves, nosy strangers, all while protecting what you've worked so hard to build. That's what virtual invisibility offers. It's not magic. It's smart legal and business strategy to shield your assets and privacy so you can live free, confident, and in control. Most people think that asset protection is only for the ultra-wealthy, but it's for anyone who wants peace of mind and financial security, including you. Don't wait until it's too late. Take control now. Call me at 213-465-0639 or go to facebook.com/Twain Consulting to learn how virtual invisibility can protect you and your family, because when you're invisible to risk, you're unstoppable. And now let's get back to Jake and Politics by Jake. Are you tired of the noise and the spin? Do you want the real story behind the headlines? I'm Jake, and this is Politics by Jake, where I tell you what they won't. And now, we're going even deeper, and I need your help to keep doing it. Join me on Patreon and support independent political analysis that doesn't pull punches. You'll get insider breakdowns, you'll get bonus clips, and first access to new content. So go to patreon.com/Politics by Jake. That's patreon.com/Politics by Jake. No filters, no fluff, just the truth. Let's do this together. All right, and this is Politics by Jake, and we're back. And I want to devote a couple of minutes to New York City, which is kind of at the heart of things. We have Governor Hochul. The New York Times is upset. The New York Times wants to have Hochul, the governor of New York, endorse Mamdani. And I would say... And Mamdani is the dark horse, came out of nowhere, is actually the candidate. And I would say you should not, Governor Hochul, endorse Mamdani. You should denounce Mamdani. And you can easily do this based on the lack of realism, the demagogic, and we're going to talk about this. The unrealistic character of his promises. He's like that. I need to find out the name of that actor on Saturday Night Live back in, I think it was the 90s or something like that. I think he was called The Great Liar, and he would go like, yeah, what I'm going to give you in New York City, there's going to be pre-K. Yeah, that's it. There's going to be pre-K. And there's going to be all kinds of childcare. Yep, that's it. All kinds of childcare made available. And it was a very funny bit, and it was called The Great Liar or something like that. You go on Saturday Night Live. I can't remember the comedian's name, but it was a recurring bit. It was very funny because it's so expressive of the way some of these candidates talk and how they appeal to the least among us. I don't say this pejoratively, but they make promises like this. because these are all lies. He's not going to be able to do this. This is all demagogic. It's unrealistic. So, like he says, there's going to be pre-K. There's going to be all kinds of childcare made available. And of course, we heard that from de Blasio. He said that too. And the point is, if you don't have a faction in the New York State Assembly and State Senate in Albany, and I'm talking about you, Mamdani, you can't do any of that. So what you see here, and I should say what you are left with, is mere demagogic rhetoric coming from Mamdani, where he talks about things that he has no way of fulfilling these things. And I think that's the main thing. Now, look, a lot of these things are laudable ideas. I'm all for an approach which aims at universal pre-K, as much at least by government expense, if the people can't afford to pay for it themselves. I have a granddaughter, for example. She has a little difficulty with her speech, and because of that, she's going to be able to get into pre-K for free. The government's going to pay for it. This is the kind of thing I'm talking about. But of course, in Manhattan, there are quite a few millionaires who can pay for it. And here's the thing. We have the nation. The nation's been around since at least 1865. And I'm referring to the periodical, the weekly periodical, okay? And there's this guy from Wisconsin, and he interviews Mamdani. And this reminds me of the softball league, right? The slow pitch softball league, where the ball comes in on a high arc, and it comes in and you can eat your lunch while you're waiting for it to get to the batter. And it's a bunch of softball questions. Like, do you read any books? Or how about how you've been doing and things like this. And Mamdani appears more and more as nothing so much as an actor. He grins. He grins like the Cheshire Cat up there in the north of England. And you'd think one of the questions would be, why do you want to inject the Palestinian question, of all things, into New York City politics? What does this have to do with us here? And why do you do things like threaten to arrest Netanyahu, that you're going to be a separate entity? You're going to control the foreign policy of the United States with the sympathies you obviously have. How can you expect, for example, to keep the United Nations in New York if you're going to arrest the people that you just don't happen to like? Because remember, the International Criminal Court, it has no valence here, right? It's a foreign institution. The United States hasn't signed the treaty. Not under Trump, not under Biden, and not under anybody else. So the grinning, he's like a radical sheik. The radical sheik becomes the radical sheik. And he's grinning all the time that he does it. The opposite approach, and the nation, I talk about what's right and what's left, what's conservative and what's reactionary and what's fascist and what's liberal and progressive and what's... The Nation is a leftist paper, and it's interesting to read, but they're very, very much a leftist newspaper. But, I would say that the opposite approach would be to say to Mamdani, look, if you really believe in the program you're putting forward, you would have to approach this with a great, great message discipline and a great organizational discipline. In other words, you must rigorously, ruthlessly remove extraneous elements from your campaign. That is to say, you'd have to say, the only way we can do anything to help the lower income people in New York City is through a statewide, but above all, a nationwide movement based on United Front characteristics and focusing everything on the indispensable, vital mass traction economic demands. And by the way, this is a plank of politics by Jake. It's the only thing that's going to work. These identity groups, forget it. It will never work. All it does is divide the party. And that, for example, would in New York City, you're going to need a united front. What's a big minority in New York is the Jewish population of New York. They're big, and a lot of them seem to prefer postmodernism to Judaism, I guess. But also, there are a lot of Jews who do not. So why do you want to alienate them by bringing in the Palestinian question, which has zero to do with the politics of New York City? At least as far as I can see, I don't think it has anything to do with that. Why do you want to do that? And then he has this stuff with Netanyahu, okay. Isn't that like a provocation? Is that what you're about? You want to be the mayor of New York City, and you're talking about stuff like this? You have this interesting catalog, free buses. You want to have these state-controlled supermarkets. And has that worked? Have you studied it? The nation could have asked him all these questions. Has that worked? Have you studied it? Can you give us a track record? Can you show us what happened? And what was it, Missouri or in Kansas, where they tried it? Didn't seem to go well there. So if you're serious about wanting these things, I'm talking to you, Mamdani, you're going to have an inclusive united front. It's the only way it's going to work. It's the only way the National Party will get things to work. An inclusive, united front approach to New York City, but then also to New York State. Upstate New York is much more like the Midwest than it is certain parts of Brooklyn, where the ultra-left seem to have their bulwark going. They seem to have their northeastern headquarters there. In other words, you've got to be inclusive on a much larger realm if you're really serious about this. I mean, and if you're going to be a Democrat, anybody calling this as a Democrat would have to say this: I am going to rigorously, implacably, ruthlessly, speaking again to you, candidate Mamdani, ruthlessly limit my public demands to things that will build a nationwide united front against MAGA, against Trump. And above all, my goal is to win the New Jersey governorship now in November, I'm referring to me, but mainly to take over the United States House of Representatives. Everything's got to be subordinated to that. And moving off of Mamdani, okay, and segueing into this. Win the New Jersey governorship in November, take over the United States House of Representatives. There's no room in any of that for saying, let's globalize the Intifada. Or he's got a friend named Khalil saying, will you condemn Hamas? Well, it's a terrorist organization. Khalil said, no, I won't. I won't condemn them. That's the guy that Mamdani says is his friend. And I wonder if some clever academic wouldn't go back and look at Mohammed Morsi of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt running for president and winning. What was his campaign like? Was his campaign similar to what he did once he got into the office, or wasn't it, to some extent, a bunch of pie-in-the-sky promises to poor, oppressed people that Morsi really had very little intention of fulfilling? And above all, the Muslim Brotherhood Party, but the Freedom and Justice Party, whatever they called themselves, they had no intention of bringing about anything like that, because once Morsi got into power, it didn't take long before he was enabling himself in the 1933 sense of enabling. And then, look, you say, you're a democratic socialist. Boy, democratic socialist? Mamdani, Democrats in the city and in the state and in the nation. Let me tell you what that means. That means goodbye, Texas. That means goodbye, Florida. And that means goodbye, large parts of Southern California, because you know damn well that people from Venezuela, people from Nicaragua, people from other parts of Cuba, above all, and others regard somebody who comes and says, I'm a democratic socialist, a social democrat, a little bit better, but democratic socialist is about as bad as can be. There's a big Hispanic vote. And you know what it did? It gravitated to Trump. It's one of the reasons why he was able to prevail. It's not the main reason. I mean, there was the issue of the 75 bomb threats that were called into polling places in key Democratic areas on the morning of the election. Remember that? The 75 bomb threats that came in? And they came into places that Biden had won. They just weren't arbitrary. They were selected. They were specific. That were never investigated by the FBI. But, I mean, if you have something based on democratic socialism, this is voter repellent. It's like insect repellent, but it repels, instead of insects, it repels voters. And how about this thing about, here's an oldie but a goodie. How about defund the police? I mean, I'm shocked at the cynicism of Mamdani. He goes to the funeral for Officer Islam. Great service rendered in New York City as a New York City police officer. So Mamdani goes there and he mourns the loss of police officer Islam. But weren't you the same guy who was trying to defund the police a little while ago? And you still have this thing about sending out a crew of shrinks instead of cops in certain situations. And at this point, let's take a break and we'll be back. This is Politics by Jake.
And now here's a word from one of our sponsors, Twain Consulting.
Hi, I'm Jake with Twain Consulting. And if you're a business owner, freelancer, or entrepreneur, protecting what you've worked so hard to build starts with solid agreement. Imagine having agreements that make misunderstandings disappear and costly disputes a thing of the past. Get It in Writing is the all-in-one legal form package designed just for people like you, savvy entrepreneurs who want clear, enforceable contracts, whether you're hiring trusted contractors, leasing space, or closing deals that move your business forward. Get It in Writing provides easy-to-use, professionally drafted forms that save you time, money, and stress. Right now, you can get full access for just $99. That's 80% off the regular $497 price. A limited time opportunity you don't want to miss. Picture the peace of mind you'll have, knowing that your business is fully protected so you can confidently focus on growth and success. Don't wait until the unexpected happens. Take control. Secure your business today with Get It in Writing. Call us now at 213-465-0639 or visit facebook.com/Twain Consulting to get started. And now let's get back to Jake and Politics by Jake. Hi, this is Jake with Politics by Jake to tell you you're not crazy. The system is rigged. Help us say it louder, won't you? Join us at patreon.com/Politics by Jake. So, okay, this is Politics by Jake, and we're back, and we're talking about Mamdani, candidate Mamdani for New York City mayor, and the kind of incongruous campaign he's running, kind of demagogic, kind of pie in the sky, kind of made for the sucker. And you can look at a lot of other things besides what I've said. You know, the green issues, the trans issues, and all these other things which take up a lot of the bandwidth. And above all, what I think is important is if you want to deal with housing, you've got to build houses. I think Mamdani is up to 200,000 houses. Unclear how he intends to pay for that. Cuomo is much better, 400,000 housing units, and quite a few of those to be affordable. So I would say rhetorical profile, this whole array of I live in the Palestine of the mind. I'm not here in New York, 100%. I'm not here for your people. I want you to vote for me. I've got references to this little country, this little area far away, where people know very little of what life is like under Hamas. And I think it shows a certain disregard. You know what our attitude here at Politics by Jake is with regard to this. Hamas is a terrorist organization. I say the PLO, and I make an exception, I say it was comprised under Arafat, was a terrorist organization too, because they absolutely, positively, Arafat he said he gloried in those who were martyrs. I heard him say that. To me, that's celebrating terrorism. Now, the PLO under Abu Abbas, I think that's going to be your default government that's going to take over Gaza and a two-state solution. They did not attack Israel. They've been doing their treaty obligations. But Hamas started this, and they refuse to end it because they think that by showing the suffering of the Palestinians and the deaths, the horrible deaths, not merely a bullet to the head, not a quick death, but death by slow starvation, by Biafra-type starvation, by African-type starvation, where the person lives on and shrinks and becomes like a skeleton and then finally dies an ignominious death, that kind of death, that kind of starvation. So I think that shows a certain disregard. I don't think it does anything for New York. I think this is a person who disrespects the voters and the electorate. I don't think I can take him seriously. I don't think he really cares about those things. I think he wants to get the power as the mayor. And his backers, the Democratic Socialists, and his volunteers, coming a lot of them coming from that group and similar groups, they're interested in taking over the Democratic Party and pushing it into those far left areas. In other words, he is a sectarian ultra-left, and that's bad. In the 20th century, we saw the sectarian ultra-lefts of the KPD, the German Communist Party. They refused to make reasonable alliances with the Social Democrats and the unions and other forces of that type. And this is what enabled Hitler to take power. If it hadn't been for the theory of social fascism in the Comintern and the third period of the Comintern, the social fascism of the KPDD, that said that main enemies of the working class are the leaders of the unions and the leaders of the Social Democratic Party. That's sort of where we are now in New York City in terms of the rhetoric. That's how Hitler was able to break through. And we talk about the New Deal a lot here at Politics by Jake, PB&J. And it was the lack of a proper Democratic Party response after 1968, the Vietnam War, the horrors of the Vietnam War, after Humphrey was defeated in 1968, that, you can point to that very much and say that was the end of the New Deal. And again, the way to have traction, old tools are the best tools, right? Mass traction, and this is Politics by Jake, this is what we believe in. Mass traction, economic demands, standard of living, inflation, Medicare, Medicaid, bring back LIHEAP for people who are going to freeze in the winter, and there was that array of social safety net and wage issues, union issues, similar things where you've got a pre-constituted majority a large, overwhelming majority. So you're not looking at some exotic issue that interests a small slice of the electorate, but you're coming out there with, again, mass traction economic demands, and they've got to be realistic. And you've got to say, too, which social class should pay for them. I have these people coming on the show. They don't come on the show. They come on the comment sections all the time and, say that people should work. Yeah, well, people should all get the same wage. What do you think about that? If all persons should equally work, they should all get the same wage. Oh, that's communism. No, it's not. And I ask you, should the average Joe and Jane, Joe and Sally Sixpack, as some call them, be taxed to pay for these things? Shouldn't it rather be the Silicon Valley billionaires, the Wall Street billionaires, and the other parasitic and predatory forces? And, well, the grinning Mamdani, the radical sheik, I'm afraid, is not correct. What you've got to do is say, is there somebody there who actually has shown leadership qualities in a huge crisis? And I would say, and some of my colleagues will throw up their hands and cry out, go back and listen to those briefings that Cuomo gave from Albany in the spring of 2020, when there was no vaccine and Trump was talking about injecting yourself with bleach or Lysol, and his followers, some of them, were so crazed and so impacted that they did it. Or whatever it was raving. And the element of realism and planning and calm leadership came from Cuomo. And I think that's worth its weight in gold. And you could say, yeah, but the ultra-left, starting with Zephyr Teachout, going on to Cynthia Nixon, oh my God, Tish James, the whole crew had a vendetta against Cuomo because he was not one of them. And he was not tactically perfect by any means. But again, the big thing was that he was able to contribute to the spring of 2020 to national stability. And that was the voice. And I know, listening far away from New York City, you could see that people oriented towards Cuomo. He was actually acting as the de facto president of the United States, and we could have had riots. We could have had all kinds of things. And it was all channeled into rational courses of action by Cuomo. And I don't think the ultra-left ever forgave him for that. So I would urge people, you people of New York City, to think about that several times. All right, and that's about all the time we have. I will see you here for the next episode. That'll be the 29th of August. Getting towards the end of the month. I hope everything goes good for you. I hope you're not too hot. I know it's the summer. It's what's known as the dog days of summer. And I hope you'll have a good week and come back at 7 a.m. or thereabouts on Friday the 29th. This has been Politics by Jake, and we'll see you on Friday. Bye-bye now.
And now here's a word from one of our sponsors, Twain Consulting.
Hi, this is Jake with Twain Consulting. If you think owning things in your own name keeps you in control, think again. In today's world, lawsuits, taxes, and predators are everywhere. That's why the smart money hides in plain sight. We help you to build legal firewalls, LLCs, land trusts, private contracts that protect your assets while keeping you invisible. Call Twain Consulting today at 310-997-2204. Find us on Facebook at Twain Consulting. That's facebook.com/Twain Consulting. Protect what you've built before someone else takes it.
And now let's get back to Jake and Politics by Jake.
Are you tired of the noise and the spin? Do you want the real story behind the headlines? I'm Jake, and this is Politics by Jake, where I tell you what they won't. And now, we're going even deeper, and I need your help to keep doing it. Join me on Patreon and support independent political analysis that doesn't pull punches. You'll get insider breakdowns, you'll get bonus clips, and first access to new content. So go to patreon.com/politics by Jake. That's patreon.com/politics by Jake. No filters, no fluff, just the truth. Let's do this together.